Picture this, you sit down to work, you open your laptop, you're like, all right, I'm actually gonna lock in this time. I'm gonna be focused, dialed for hours. And that's probably true, but unfortunately only for about 5 or 10 minutes. Then there's a little pause, there's a paragraph that you're finding hard to write or a problem you can't solve. And in that tiny gap, you suddenly get a thought for some reason and you're like, oh, let me just check something real quick. So you grab your phone or you go open a tab, you just check something real quick, 30 seconds at most, no problem, right? And then you just go back to your work, everything's normal. Except now you're not really back to work, you're sort of back to work. And then a few minutes later, you'll get another intrusive thought, go check something else, look something else up. And you keep doing this cyclically, and before you know it, 2 hours have passed and you're sitting there wondering, how has so much time passed? And also, how have I got so little work done in this time? If this sounds like you at all, I'm gonna explain what's going on in your head when you do this and why you do this, because it's not just your lazy problem, it's not an undisciplined problem. This is a very mechanical problem. And once you see it, I think you won't be able to unsee it and then you can start to fix it. If you haven't watched me before, my name is Charlie. I used to lose so many of my afternoons, evenings, I would do exactly this. I would sit down with the intent to work for a few hours and I'd always end up checking stuff and totally losing my focus, losing all my evenings. I have put in a lot of work to change this and to get my focus back. And I want to explain to you today the benefits of why I did this and also the process that allowed me to do this. Let me first describe the loop so that we're on the same page. Even if you have never said this out loud to yourself before, you probably are going to know exactly what I'm talking about. You start to work on something and you're doing it for a few minutes, but then you hit a small point of friction. Like I said, it could be a paragraph that's hard to write, a problem, something that makes your work a little difficult. And then before you even know it, your hand is reaching for your phone or unconsciously opening another tab. So you go and check the thing, whatever the intrusive thought was, and then you come back to work. A few minutes later, it happens again. This keeps going over and over again. Your brain doesn't even consciously make the decision to check it. It kind of just happens before you can even realize it. That's the whole loop here. You start something, you have a little bit of friction, and then eventually you come back, except you're a little less focused, and you keep repeating that cycle. The part that most people get wrong about this cycle is that they think the problem is only the time. They think, oh, I just lost 20 minutes checking Instagram, so I should just check it less, get my 20 minutes back, and then the problem is solved. So they try to just check their phone less, open less tabs, and they feel bad when they fail, and nothing really changes. The time is not actually the main thing that you're losing. What you're actually losing is the bigger problem that I'm gonna describe in this video, and the cost of that is a lot more metaphorically expensive. A while back, I read this book called Deep Work, which you may have heard of, and in there's a concept called attention residue, which basically explained this entire thing to me, this problem that had been going on for a huge portion of my life. Here's the concept. Every time that you switch from one priority to another, your brain, a piece of your brain, quietly stays a little bit focused on the last thing. It doesn't cleanly let go. 100% of your brain does not automatically shift to the next thing with no residue whatsoever. A part of you quietly is still thinking a little bit about the thing that you just did, and you don't have any control over that. I promise you, you already know what this feels like, but you've just never applied it to work before. An example you will probably understand that used to happen to me is, you know, those late nights when you're on the game, you have a crazy match, you do like a late session, you stay up till like 2 a.m. and then you try to go to sleep finally, you're really tired, but your brain is still so active, you're thinking about the game, your crazy play that you had. That's residue. You're still thinking about the previous thing despite you trying to do something else. Even though the game is over, you're literally lying in the dark trying to fall asleep. You still can't stop thinking about it. This could also apply to anything else that happened throughout the entirety of your day that you're still thinking about. Now take that same phenomenon and shrink it down to the size of you're just checking your phone once in a while when you're writing a paper. So you're locked in on writing, but then you struggle to formulate an idea. So you just go check something real quick and then you come back to your paper. But part of your brain is still thinking about the message that you just read or the post you just read. And so you think that you're still focused writing the paper, but whether you like it or not, whether you even realize it or not, part of your brain is still focused on something else while you should be focused on the writing. And again, to use a video game analogy, we would say this effect stacks. So the first time you use this attention residue, you switch something and then come back to your focus, it's not too bad. But the second time, it's a little worse, and et cetera, et cetera. By the time you've done this 10 times in an hour, checking 10 different things, your attention is so splintered all over the place that you're gonna find it nearly impossible to focus on the thing you originally meant to do. You're technically still sitting at your desk, but your focus is mentally scattered across the entire room, across all these different things. When I tell people this, sometimes they come back and explain that it's fine because they're just good at multitasking. That's a lie. Nobody's good at multitasking. Multitasking is nothing more than switching your attention, which you now have a concept and you now know is a bad thing. In the sense that you're switching so rapidly, you're actually doing two things badly, or at least two things worse than you could be doing if you had just done them one at a time. The people most sure that they're amazing at multitasking actually tend to be the ones most impacted by attention residue, because they never slow down their point and focus on one thing at a time to the point where they realize that how shallow their work has become now. The example that the author gave was office workers, so the corporate job people. And he said that even just checking their emails made their attention way worse on whatever work task they were trying to do. Even though emails aren't even that far off, they're still at least somewhat related to work, and they still negatively impacted your attention quite a bit. So consider that. If a work-related email that's related to your job can impact your attention like that, what do you think looking at Reels does, or checking your Snapchats? That stuff is not just slightly off topic, it's totally the opposite of what you're supposed to be focusing on. You're directing your attention at the furthest possible thing away from what you're supposed to be doing, and then you're bringing all that attention residue back to your desk with you when you're supposed to be locked in doing school or work. Another problem with attention residue is that it not only ruins the work you're supposed to be doing, it actually ruins the experience of the phone too. Most people, when they check their phone in the middle of the work, it's, at least they say to justify it, is that they're taking a break, which is probably true. But if you carry the residue from the work you've been doing into checking your phone, then you have residue into your break, and you can't even enjoy your break as much. And then again, you go and carry the phone residue back to the work, so you can't even fully work, and you also can't even fully enjoy your break. You're taking the worst of both worlds and combining them. That's why 2 hours of working while periodically checking your phone leaves you feeling more tired, more drained than just 2 hours straight of focused work. You didn't get a single real break the entire time. You just kept splitting your attention half and half. And a person doing two things badly will feel more fatigued than a person doing one thing very well. Now, I have been talking about the phone a lot, but to be clear, this whole cycle can happen with anything that's around your environment, whether that's a ton of tabs on the computer, or a TV, or a bunch of clutter, a bunch of stuff you haven't cleaned up. Any opportunity that you leave yourself to be able to switch to something, eventually you will. But the phone is the worst offender. It's on a different level for two reasons. One is it's always there. It's very easy to access. It's 24/7 temptation to very easily switch off. It never disappears. Two, which is the more sneaky one that people don't consider, it's built and engineered to be a temptation to switch to. The engineers who designed it want you to pick it up as many times in a day as possible. All the notifications and the red dots and how addicting it is, all of that was purposefully designed. None of that is an accident, and you're not gonna conquer this and work for 2 hours without checking your phone just by vaguely having the intention to not check it. And to go even further, something that really surprised me when I learned it is that even just having your phone face down on your desk actually drains your attention. Not even lighting up, not even any notifications, no sounds, just having it visually on your desk, face down. Part of your brain is still looking at it and still thinking about it a little bit, and all of that, even if it's a little bit, all that energy that your brain is using is energy that is not actually being directed into your work. Next, let's focus on the exact moment when you grab your phone, because that is not a random moment, and if you can catch yourself doing it in these moments, then you can begin to fix this problem. The moment that you reach for your phone is the moment when the work becomes slightly difficult. Not when the work is flowing and you're in a flow state and you're really locked in. That makes it easy to focus. You don't even really think about checking your phone during that time. It's when there's a little interruption, something that's a little difficult. When you find a sentence that you don't know how to start, or a paragraph that is really boring to write for some reason. Even just a smidge of boredom or smidge of difficulty gives your brain the opportunity to look for a little escape and a little gap. And usually that escape is the most convenient thing that is in your pocket or lying around at your desk or somewhere nearby, which is, of course, your cell phone. I've talked before about a concept that I call decision vacuums, which are the little unplanned moments where you haven't decided what to do next, so your brain just defaults to the highest dopamine option available. This is an example of those decision vacuums, just at a very small scale. This can happen 5 or 10 or dozens of times per hour. Every small delay or problem in your work where you don't know what to write next is a decision vacuum. And your brain wins every one of those because it's the highest dopamine option available. It's the easiest thing available, so your brain will default to it. Here's how I would like you to reframe this in your mind. The urge to check your phone is a signal. It is a signal that you just reached the part of the work that requires real thinking, that requires actual focus. The hard sentence to figure out how to write is the sentence that actually matters. The problem that you're struggling to do most is actually the most important problem. So the exact moment that you're feeling the urge to switch your attention is the moment where you need to lock in the most. So don't consider it as an interruption, consider it as an indicator for where the work is most important. Most people switch their focus only at this time when the work becomes important, which means they're actually only doing easier and shallower work, and then they're wondering why they can't seem to finish or accomplish anything difficult. I also want to elaborate, as the title of this video would suggest, why the quick check is such a lie, because getting truly into focus, into that flow state, is not a quick or instant thing. It's not a switch you flip. It's not something you instantly unlocked to get to the point where your brain is fully focused on one thing and one thing only. It could be 15 or 20 minutes of ramping up into the state of focus before your brain actually gets to that point. So when you check your phone for 30 seconds, you don't only lose 30 seconds, you also lose all the time, say 10 or 15 minutes that you had spent getting dialed in, and now that resets to 0. So you also have to consider yourself losing that time. And if you're checking your phone every few minutes, then I think you could see the problem pretty clearly. You're never actually going to reach that deep state of focus, not once. You spend the entire 2 hours that you assigned yourself to work climbing the first 100 feet of a mountain and then slipping down and going back and forth, and you're calling that work. This is the difference between two things that may look very identical from the outside, but they're actually very different. There's the time you spent in your chair, which is the total hours that you had allotted yourself, and then there's work time, which is how many minutes or hours of that time that your full attention actually was on the task. You've been measuring your work time as chair time, but nobody cares about chair time. You can sit in that chair for 4 hours and produce functionally only 30 minutes of work. You just spread it out enough to cover the whole afternoon, and then you'll feel exhausted and tired and accomplished and behind somehow all at once. It's not a very good feeling. Now, I don't say this to be critical. I say this because this was actually exactly me a few years ago when I was in high school. This is why I can describe this stuff so specifically, because I did this for years. I would sit down to work on my laptop, usually on a school assignment, and I would have 10 tabs open on my laptop. I'd have my phone face up on my desk next to me, but I would cope and I'd say, oh, it's okay, because technically I'm on my laptop, technically I'm working. But if we're being real, I actually wasn't locking in and doing the work. I was hovering pretty near it, but I was actually bouncing between different work and different intrusive thoughts all evening. And the stuff that should have taken me an hour to finish took me 4 hours. Not because it was that difficult, but because I never was giving myself the time and allowing myself fully to get into a good state of focus. Every one of those switches was not a neutral thing. Everybody acts like it's neutral, but it's actually negative. You think you're just failing to work, but it's deeper than that. You're actually practicing the opposite. Every time that you hit some friction in your work and you escape to your phone, you're teaching your brain that friction or difficulty in any sense means escape. So it's not only that one particular evening that you were distracted the whole time was a waste, it's that you're actually training your brain to build up the exact habit, the attention switching, the lack of focus that is currently your problem now. The exact habit that is ruining all your days. You built it. But the good news is you can reverse this and you can build it and make it go the other way as well. For years, I would get to the end of one of these evenings and I would not have as much done as I wanted to. I would get so mad at myself. I'd think like, what is wrong with me? Why can I not focus like a normal person? But what I eventually came to understand, and that I need you to pay attention to, is it's not that you can't focus, it's that you've never given yourself the chance to focus. You've never once, or at least this has been years, since you have sat down, removed all distractions, all clutter from your environment, and really given yourself the chance, no distractions, to lock in. So you don't actually have evidence that you can't focus, but you do have a long history of sitting in a room and failing to focus because of the environment in that room. If there is an exit or an escape every time you hit a point of friction, that is not failing to focus, that is a poorly designed environment. However, when I say that the problem is your environment, I do not mean that it is not your responsibility to fix it. Those two things are not the same. Your environment is absolutely your fault because you're the one who put the phone on your desk. You're the one who left the 10 tabs open. You built the room, but again, that's good because that means you're the one who gets to change it. Nobody is going to go to your house and take your phone off your desk and hide it from you and not let you look at it for 4 hours. So the pull and the addiction of the phone may be engineered, sure, but your hand that is reaching for it over and over is still yours. The way I fix this is almost going to sound too simple, but simple is the point here. It's the point in a lot of my videos. It's usually better that way. I just stopped switching to the very best of my ability. I made a rule for myself. Either I will sit down and do this task, do this homework assignment until it is done, or I will sit down, put a timer, not on my phone, maybe on an alarm clock or on the computer or something. I will sit down, and until this timer goes off, I will do focused work until that. So until the task is done or until the time's up. One task, no phone, no extra clutter, no nothing, just one thing to focus on. And notice how simple that rule is and what it's actually doing, because it's not asking you to have crazy willpower in that moment and see your phone and see all those open tabs and use your sheer willpower to not look at them. Because willpower in the moment, if you decide to rely on that, is very much a losing game because you only have so much of it each day and the phone is designed to take it very, very quickly. The reason the rule works is because it removes the temptation to switch before it even appears, because you can't switch to something that's not there. That's why just checking it less doesn't work, and putting it in another room, for example, does work. Because remember, even when it's face down, no notifications on your desk, it is still taking a little bit of your focus. So the face down on the desk or in the back of your room, that's not good enough. That is still taking energy that you ought to be putting into your work. Put it in another room, add some friction, make yourself have to take the effort of standing and walking to another room to go grab it. That extra little bit of friction, the friction of having to get up, is enough to kill a lot of those times when you just check it out of habit anyway, because remember, a lot of that is just habit. And I know that there's a cope here. Oh, I need it near me in case someone urgently needs something. For almost everything that you sit down to do, you actually don't. And deep down, you know that. An hour and a half period of time where you're unreachable is not the end of the world. If you're actually on call for something important, that may be the case, use your judgment, but don't let the occasional valid reason be the purpose for the phone sitting on your desk for every ordinary study session or work time when you don't actually need it. Same thing with the extra tabs on your browser. Close all of them that you don't need for your work or your homework. Yeah, you might need some of them later, and that's fine. You can spend a few seconds, go in your search history, and find them again. And if we're talking attention, that is a bargain compared to whatever energy it costs you seeing the tab at the corner of your browser and having to ignore it. Same logic goes for the video or the music that you leave playing in the background to help you focus. If it's instrumental music with no lyrics, no words, and doesn't really impact or distract your attention span, fine, that's not ridiculous. But a YouTube video running in the background while you work is not a background, it's a distraction. It's a second thing taking your attention, and it's gonna split your attention and add something else you have to focus on and increase your residue. I promise you, every time it says something interesting, you'll actually start listening and it will pull away a piece of your attention from what you're supposed to be doing. If you could tell me what the video just said 5 seconds ago, then you're not really focused on your work. For what it's worth, I find complete silence to easily be the best environment to do work. You're not trying to become a monk here who feels no temptation. Again, for months and years of working on this, the temptation still hasn't gone away from me. I think this happens for everybody. When I first started doing this, I would sit there on my computer with the phone in another room with no tabs open, with nothing to do, and the intrusive thoughts would still appear. I would be really tempted. I'd get really bored, stuck on what paragraph to write, feeling really complicated. I would absolutely get bored and still feel the temptation to go and check something else. I didn't get rid of those intrusive thoughts at all, but what I did succeed for the most part, sometimes I failed to do this, is to actually act on the urge. And every single time that you feel the urge and you don't act on it, you're doing the reverse of what we talked about earlier. You're training your focus instead of training your brain to escape. You're practicing staying locked in. The thing that made me stick with this though was not discipline, it was not willpower. Those things are not consistent. They can disappear after the first week. The thing that made me stick with this in the long term is the reward and how good I felt doing it afterward. Once I stopped switching what I was doing all the time, I started getting way more done in way less time, and that became a very addicting feeling for me. I'm in college currently. It's summer. As of right now, I don't have class when I'm recording this, but last semester I had an 8-page paper to write. I literally sat down and wrote it all in one sitting. I'm not even kidding. And when I turned it in, I sat back on my chair and I was like, there's no way that I would have been able to do that even 2 years ago. The old version of me would have taken 3 or 4 days to get that thing done. That's the trade-off that I don't hear a lot of people talk about. On the one side, you have the quick and cheap dopamine, which is fun now, but destroys your focus and attention in the long term. On the other side, you have a deeper feeling, more of an earned reward that you get when you actually finish something, but it lasts a lot longer. It's a lot more satisfying. Once your brain gets a little more used to that, sitting down for a while and locking in and doing the thing, finishing it really fast, doing a good quality of your work, then your brain starts to recognize the phone for what it is, which is the worst end of the deal there. So when you're mid-task and you get a sudden intrusive thought to check something, remember 2 things. 1, this urge means that I just hit the part of the work that matters, the part that I need to be focused the most on. 2, if I stay here, the reward that I will get from finishing this is better than the reward that the phone is offering me now. And then stay there and don't move and stay locked in. That is how you train your focus. So to sum it up, the time that you lose to your phone is just a small cost. The real cost is that every time you switch, it leaves residue. It takes your brain off of the attention of the thing that you're supposed to be doing and quietly trains your brain to start escaping something the second that things become difficult. You've been measuring chair time and calling it work time, and you were never actually bad at focusing on things. You just never cleared the room, cleared out your environment and your brain, and gave yourself the chance to. The fix for this is not more motivation, it's not more willpower, it is to switch fewer times, as few as possible. Stick to one task at a time, phone in another room, tabs closed, and when the urge shows up, treat it as proof that the work that you're doing right now matters, and you are much more likely to stay focused and stay locked in. Do that a few times and let yourself feel how it is, maybe for the first time in a while, to actually in one sitting finish something. I promise it's a very addicting feeling. If you're still watching, please comment any ideas or any problems that you're having in your journey to developing attention. I will try my best to address them in future videos. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.